got a lifetime of knowledge.
Let me call Mimi.
Okay.
I was
Welcome back.
every time we do the openings, I'm like, what should our intro be? And last night I was lying in bed, I was like, welcome to Illyria. Welcome.
Let's just sprinkle as many She's the Man references throughout and give a
Literally.
prize to people when they pick them up. It's like an Easter egg, but
It's an
She's the
Easter
Man.
egg.
That is
Yeah.
so funny.
Okay,
but
cool. Today we're here to
we're
talk
back.
about prenups, which is very exciting. And we actually got quite a few requests for this episode, which was great. Probably because a lot of our friends are getting married or just recently got married. And
Right.
we had such a funny story from one of our friends who was saying that she and her husband decided that they were going to get a prenup. So they went, got married, and then a few months later, we're like, okay, let's go get our prenup. And so they went to a lawyer and they were like, hey, we want to do our prenup. Can you tell us how this works? And the lawyer was like, okay, yeah, 100%. Went through a bunch of stuff and then said, so when's the wedding date? And they're like, no, we got married like a few months ago. And they're like, well, no, it's a prenup, meaning prenuptials, meaning pre-marriage. You get this before you get married. So shows you how much we all know about prenups and why this episode is very important.
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in this boat. I am getting married next year to my fiance Luke. And we've discussed this at a high level, mostly because I feel like these days you're told that if you don't get a prenup as a woman, you're like, it's the stupidest thing you could ever do. Like, I think there's a lot of rhetoric that it is the right thing to do, and that if you don't, you know, hopefully everyone stays married forever and ever, but that if you don't, you're screwed inevitably in some way, shape, or form. So on that basis alone, I said to Luke, I was like, "Are you open to getting a prenup?" He, you know, Luke, he's like, "Whatever you want, babe." Like, he doesn't care. Yeah, I don't think he knows what that is, and
Send the dotted line. I will
yeah,
sign.
he's like, "Whatever." And so we've talked about it at a high level, just being like, you know, let's go through the motions. And then in doing a little bit of research for this episode, I realized, at least in the US, how expensive it is. And I was like, who can afford that? Minimum, I think it's like $3,000, at least is what I read. We can get into the numbers. But I was like, I'm trying to plan a wedding, and that does not fit into the budget.
Yeah,
So
that would have to come out of the dress budget, which we're not changing.
that's my whole dress. Like, that's two dresses. Like, that's not going to
Yeah.
happen. So we're at a stalemate now. But I'm happy that this episode is happening now so that I can learn more about it and figure out ways forward, hopefully.
Yes, that's a good point. Steven and I got married in April and we did not get a prenup. And that was an interesting, I actually chatted to him about this recently. We beforehand talked about it a lot, and we decided that whatever we do moving forward, we're building together. What we realized is and agreed on is that if someone is really leaning into their career and being the main breadwinner for the family, it means sometimes that the other person has to take a step back so that they can support that person. But doing that and taking a step back is enabling that your person to do what they do. And most family law marriages say that it's 50-50 split when you get divorced. And so we came to the conclusion that because of this, we will not have a prenup. I don't know if that was the right decision or not. It was the best decision for us at the time. We did not speak to a lawyer about it. We spoke to each other. And so, and again,
enough.
we are not
Starts
experts.
there.
It starts there.
Yeah,
We
starts
are not
there.
the experts.
Because what I've heard, at least from, because I'm with you there in terms of everything that you build from the marriage onward. But what I've heard around like the nightmare situations is that someone can go after the things that you had prior to the marriage, which, like,
Yes.
let's be real, it's not
I
like
had
you have a
nothing.
whole lot of assets going on, but like, you
Yeah.
know, any accounts or investments that you had personally beforehand. I've heard inheritances can get, unfortunately, really messy. Apparently someone can come after what you are due to inherit from your parents if that's not set in stone, which
Yeah.
is like, you think in your head, you're like, who would do that? But then you hear these things of, you know,
I
things get
know.
really messy. So I don't know. That's what I've been told, but we're going to
No,
learn a
yeah.
lot more through this.
And that's a good point. And I think Alexa will take us through this. Okay. So some fun facts on this.
About
Okay. Maybe
prenups.
this isn't so fun, but 1 in 2 marriages still end in divorce. So
Shit.
maybe not the most fun first fact to start on. But what is interesting is finances are the number one reason that people get divorced. And so we had this conversation with Shalina earlier on merging finances with your partner, but I think prenup is another realm of that, of just kind of sitting down and having the conversation around finances. Within that, prenup popularity is growing fast. So especially among millennials, a recent Harris poll found that 40% of millennials, and that's people aged 26 to 41, who are getting married or engaged have signed a prenup. That is up from just 3% of older generations. So
Wow.
before us, no one was getting prenups, but the millennials are really ringing that in.
I think there must just be so much familial trauma of like,
100%.
seeing that. I mean, that one in two marriages end in divorce, I think has continued on from, I don't know, we could find out for however long, but more of my friends have divorced parents than not. My parents are still together. Um, Caitlin's are divorced, but
Yeah,
I think that trauma of seeing probably what for a lot of people is a very messy and unfriendly and like shitty situation that
totally.
people are like, I'm going to protect myself from any of that, you know?
100%. I hilariously went the opposite way. I definitely have trauma from my parents' divorce, but I was like, I will never get divorced.
Yeah,
And I'm like, Steven, you're
totally.
locked in for life.
Yeah, you're
And
like,
like,
I don't care what happens, we're in it, which I think is
yeah,
also a completely
yeah. And I
fair
think it
take.
also made me be so pedantic and specific about who I choose to marry and just like run all of the scenarios in my
Totally.
head of all the possibilities. And I was like, okay, I will marry someone who I want to be with for the rest of my life and I'm never getting divorced.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, we spoke about with Shalina, like your familial patterns and childhood, I think, shape your relationship with money. One of my best friends, her parents are divorced, and saw that be such a point of contention in their divorce that she can't talk about money, period. Like, she's the person who's like, if we're out to dinner and we're talking about splitting the bill, she's like, I'll just cover it because I actually can't handle any awkwardness around the topic. And
Wow.
so that's like one extreme, and then all the way to the other where you're probably a lot more conservative on that, so everyone's got their own shit.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So couples are getting married later, which we know. We spoke to Dr. Lucky and egg freezing. The average age of a first birth is 30, and that is also the average age of people getting married now.
Wow.
So 30 is when most couples are getting married, and it means that they are also getting married then with more assets and also more debt. So
Sure.
you're later on in your career, you might have more money in the bank, but it also might mean you still have your student loans. There's stuff that you're coming into the marriage with.
And you're
Um,
probably making decisions as an adult approaching that process. Like when our parents got married at 21, they probably
totally.
weren't thinking about prenup, so that also makes sense.
Absolutely. Again,
That's right.
absolutely. We were like out of university, like, yoo-hoo,
Yeah.
like going
Yeah.
to the chapel.
$3,000 for a prenup, like
I know.
in what world? Yeah.
You're like,
I
that's the
mean,
whole
still.
wedding.
Yeah, literally.
Um, okay, yeah. And then 70% of prenups now include non-traditional clauses. So that is from social media behavior to pet custody. So many threads between all of our interviews. So social media behavior, pet custody, and startup equity, prenups today reflect the realities of modern relationships and are not just about money.
Makes sense. So interesting. I'm really interested to see how Alexa approaches it from like a standard, but then non-standard. What was it? Or in like
Yeah,
unique circumstances,
non-traditional clauses.
non-traditional
Non-traditional. So,
clauses.
Lundy, if you and I ever get married, we'll have to decide who gets the podcast.
I know the domain rights. We can go 50-50. We can split it
50-50 for us.
when it's worth $1 billion.
Exactly.
Big
Venture
deal.
investors hit us up.
Yeah, exactly. It needs to be worth something before we can argue over it.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. And then last one is women are earning and owning more. And they want to protect it. So in 45% of the US heterosexual marriages, the woman is the primary breadwinner or earns as much as her partner. Prenups are increasingly used by women to protect their income, business, or family wealth. So
Amen.
love that for the ladies. 45% are the primary breadwinners or earn just as much, which is great.
Love that for the ladies. I'm
And they're protecting
actually
themselves.
surprised by that number. I feel
I
like that
know.
would probably be a little bit lower still, but good to hear. Eventually
It's in the
50-50.
US. In
Yeah.
the US, we just have to put that down. The other things I wanted to add to this is just a few definitions going into this to give context to the conversation beforehand. So the word nuptial is prenup, The word nuptial comes from the Latin word nuptialis, meaning marriage or wedding,
Nuptialis.
and is
Perfect.
used as an adjective to describe anything related to marriage or wedding. So prenup, just for clarity's sake, that is pre-nuptials, before getting married, which our friend learned after she got married. You cannot get a prenup once you've been married.
Correct. Awesome. Tell us about Alexa. Do we know
Oh,
her by
yes.
any?
Okay. Alexa. So we love Alexa. I spoke to her before this. She is going to be so fun. So Alexa is a Toronto-based family lawyer, collaborative practitioner, and an accredited family mediator committed to helping families resolve their disputes respectively, creatively, and with dignity. Alexa founded Resolve, which is her firm, with her mom in 2018, and we love that she did it with her mom. That's so
We
great.
love it.
We love it.
Amazing.
Alexa empowers clients to craft their own agreements beyond the legal model, work towards their desired outcomes, and preserve relationships.
I had heard at one point that a prenup could be considered insurance in the same way that you have car insurance. You don't want to get in a car accident, but it's there in case you do. You have health insurance. You don't want to end up, at the hospital, but it's there in case you do. And same as prenups are there in case you end up at, a, divorce situation, which, for some people is not actually a bad thing. Divorce, I also think, is painted oftentimes as like the worst possible thing that can happen. And it's not for some people.
Yeah,
So,
it could be like Gwyneth Paltrow, conscious uncoupling.
amen. And look at her now.
Look at her now.
And look
Living
at
the
her
dream.
now. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Okay, amazing. I'm excited to speak to Alexa. Let's bring her on. Please note that this pod is for educational purposes only. Nothing we say should be taken as financial, legal, or medical advice. Please do your own research, and when in doubt, ask an actual expert.
Okay, well, I'm going to say the official welcome to Actual Experts, Alexa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you
Thanks
so much for
being
having
here.
me.
Yeah, I can give you a little bit of context for how this is going to run. One of us always does the research in advance, and then the other person comes in relatively blind as if they are the listener. So in this case, I am the researcher. Lundie is the person coming in blind, and so she may interrupt halfway through if we go down a rabbit hole and just be like, whoa, 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 what are you guys talking about?
Break down the acronyms, the jargon, all that.
Yeah. But we're so excited to have you on. I know when we spoke a little bit earlier, there was a bit of this disclaimer that you mentioned around practicing law in the province, state, country. I'll think that when we talk about prenups, which we are here to talk about, you do need to speak to someone from your state, province, region, country. So I don't know if there's anything that you as a lawyer need to say at the beginning before we start.
Yeah, I probably should just say like none of this is legal advice. I'm so sorry. Lawyers are so formal. And also that law is so jurisdictional. So what I say is applied to people that live in Ontario and in Canada. And I don't have expertise all around the world. But I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is applicable to everyone. It's just the specifics of what you contract. I can't really weigh in on.
Yeah, that's perfect. And that's super clear. But I saw when I was looking you up and doing some research for this that you studied theater as an undergrad.
I did, yeah. So I actually went to a performing arts high school in Toronto.
Okay.
And certainly until I walked in the doors of law school, thought I was going to be an actor.
Okay.
But like I've never been an actor. So it wasn't really like I'd been in nothing. You would know me from nothing. But I just was like, maybe after I travel the world, like I'll just be an actor again and that will just happen. And for anybody that's an actor, it's like very, very hard to be a working actor.
Yeah.
I would be a terrible one. But I did do playwriting and directing, and then I did some acting in high school. So it was definitely a passion. It feels like a long time ago now.
Yeah, but so fun. So then where on your world travels did you decide, hey, I'm not going to be an actor. I'm going to go into family law?
Well, so my mom is a family lawyer, and she, at the time I was, growing up, I thought she was just my mother who went to work, but I've come to learn because she actually became my law partner. I started by saying I would never join her. I would never be a lawyer. Lawyers are so boring. What she does is just so uncreative and uninspired, which is really funny because here I am now. But My mom was a family lawyer, and so I went to Dalhousie for theater. When I finished, she was like, "Cool, like we're not paying for you anymore.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the plan?"
Yeah, you're cut
And
off.
so maybe you should apply to something or do something because, just living here trying to be an actor. And if that's the case, like, what's the business pitch for that one?
Yeah.
I
It's
was
like
like,
in
"Well, I don't
Girls
have
where they say we're cutting you off. Do you watch Girls? And
It
Hannah's
was
like,
exactly
Mom,
like Leah. Yes.
yeah, she's like, I'm busy trying to become who I am. And she's like, you're done. You're cut off. That's so funny. I can
It was
picture it.
exactly like that. And except she was like, you could live here for like 6 months. And I was like, that's not really going to work. So I applied to law school before traveling because also my best friend at the time was, and I was like, well, that's fine, fine. And so I ended up getting into one school and I ended up going because I didn't have a plan otherwise. Like it wasn't that thought through. And thank God it happened that way because I love what I do now and it's super creative and inspiring. Like getting to know people so intimately, getting to understand them, having the privilege to be in the know of their most intimate parts of their life is really a privilege.
So tell us a little bit. I know you look at through divorce through a different lens. So I want to understand more what you guys do versus maybe what another law firm would do.
I think if you think of the movies, right, they think about lawyers in court fighting over all things and it's kind of funny or it's dramatic and they think that's how you have to divorce, right? You have to have a judge make all the important decisions for you. But what is so odd about it is that the things in family law are the things that matter to everyone. It's your children, where they're going to live, who makes decisions about them. It's your money, like everything you've ever built. It's everything that matters, and not in like a replaceable way, in a completely irreplaceable way. And it's about every friend circle you have with your partner that might be disentangled. It's your in-laws you might love or not, right? It just bleeds everywhere. And I found that having a court who knew you for 1 minute make decisions about all of those very important things felt very odd.
Yeah.
And I continue to think it's very odd and strange. And it also costs a huge amount of money that for most normal people would be in lieu of paying for their kids' education or helping them with the down payment of a house or frankly keeping them out of debt. And so the way I practice, I act in kind of two different ways, but I'm a mediator, which is a bit more common to most people. The most famous scene in a movie is like Owen Wilson and Vince Vaughn in The Wedding Crashers. They're mediators and they do that funny thing about the air miles. Like
Yeah.
it's not that, but that's mediation where you sit in the
Okay.
same room and have a conversation about it. Or I work as a collaborative lawyer, which is with a whole team of professionals. So maybe a financial person and a social worker. Together as a team, we help negotiate the terms of what will be an agreement that will dissolve the marriage. And I view divorce as a restructure, right? It's not an end. You are always connected. I tell people this all the time. They hate it, but it's true. If you have children, particularly, you're connected forever. So we either can restructure the way you live productively and hope that we can work on communication and healing so that your kids can see you stand together at a graduation or whatever your goal might be, rather than continue to like hit each other over the head metaphorically in a court where you just have to raise everything that's ever been bad about them.
Can I ask, so as a mediator, are you hired by the couple or by one part of the couple, or how are you employed?
That's a great question. By both of them.
By
So the
both, okay.
chief difference between like when I'm a lawyer, I'm hired by one, and when I'm the mediator, I'm a neutral acting for both.
And do they
Interesting.
each have their own lawyers at the table?
Not always. Most of the time,
Okay.
they actually don't. Often they have their own lawyers, what we call offline. So they'll have a
Okay.
chat with them. They'll be available. Some people don't have any lawyers, although we encourage that they do. And then some people have lawyers at the table. That's just a very expensive way to go about it because now we have three professionals, but
Yeah.
often that can be really helpful and needed.
And you mentioned that you have this team around you to help. Is that something that you and your mom and you bring to the table and you say, hey, we've got these people that will help advise that are child psychologists or whatever it is that come with you? Or is that something people need to bring themselves?
I will refer them. So they're not associated with my business, but they're people that I work with often. So that's called the collaborative process. It's everywhere, actually. The process is global, and there, you have to be trained as a collaborative professional. So,
Okay.
and usually, at least in Ontario, I will refer 2 or 3 social workers who act as a family professional to help with parenting plans, communication, dynamics issues, things like that.
What a hopeful way for the future. Like that,
Right, that's the
Totally.
so much
goal.
better. I am a product, I'm a child of divorce, and I can say if this was the approach taken, it would have made everyone's life very different.
Oh,
I
I'm
was going to say,
sorry.
though, it sounds expensive. So I'm curious also how accessible collaborative approaches are.
Question. So what I will say is you're going to spend money to divorce productively, period. Cost is something I talk about with every file and every client and every family all day. Ultimately, I would say mediation is usually without lawyers, is usually the least expensive, then collaborative, and then court. Court is a fortune because you have to prepare written materials, then there's oral advocacy. You have to pay for your lawyer to sit there all day and wait to be called, right? So it's not efficient. It is needed for some, like there's a reason we have a court process. Like any lawyer listening is going to be like, sometimes it's needed. Of course, sometimes it's needed. Okay, but mostly it's not because we know over 97% of files settle. We know this, at least in Ontario. But collaborative, I would say, can be very expensive and often is not that expensive because it depends what the issues are at the table and it depends who's doing what. I can tell you I have 2 teachers using collaborative. Like it's certainly accessible to most people, but divorce has a cost to it.
So that's when we talk about getting married, obviously the end that we are not hoping for is to go through a divorce or a conscious uncoupling, however people want to phrase it now. But why do you think, if we roll it back to the beginning and looking at potentially protecting ourselves, why do you think people freak out when they hear the word prenup?
For exactly what you just said, the word protection freaks people out because so I don't know many people, maybe you guys do, but I don't know many people who meet and in 2 seconds are married. Often by the time you are having that conversation, you have developed a partnership where your lives are intertwined in a meaningful way. And so when we have a conversation about prenups, which in Ontario they're called marriage contracts, but let's call them prenups for now. When we have conversations about the idea of protecting ourselves, it changes the conversation from an us conversation to a me versus you conversation. And what that does is it highlights all the insecurities we have in a relationship rather than look at identifying the commonalities and goals and what we want for each other. So I really try to steer away from this idea of protection and replace it with planning.
Sure.
How do we plan for an event we don't like? Like we get life insurance because we don't plan to die prematurely, but we plan for it, right? Just in case. Much like it would be naive to think, look, half of relationships end. That's still a statistic. It would be unrealistic to not plan for what a separation might look like, even if you hope it doesn't.
Right.
And we all saw the crazy Coldplay fiasco of the CEO cheating on screen at the Coldplay concert. And Lundie and I both follow this woman, Sol Lee, who founded a company called Neptune. It's a tech company that helps with marriage contracts or prenups, depending on where you are, but based in New York. And she posted on LinkedIn about how many people were messaging her around, like, where's my clause around cheating? And she wrote this quote that I just loved. It said, prenups are about mutual understanding and alignment, not about presuming the worst. When you create a prenup from a place of punishment, it kind of defeats the whole point of creating a thoughtful framework for your partnership. And it really aligns with what you just said. This is not about, there's protection is how a lot of people see it, but it's really about like insurance for you as you come together in this thoughtful framework for your partnership.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that, frankly, a lot of people say, if they cheat on me, I don't want to do this, but if they didn't, I'd be fine. And if there's a worry that someone's cheating on you, that is something to manage. Like that's something to manage within the relationship that you have.
Yeah.
And, look, relationships look all different ways. Like we are now in a culture where there are open relationships and polyamorous relationships and relationships that don't follow the more monogamous trajectory. But if that's what you want, the amount of people that don't have that conversation and make a series of assumptions about that is many, right?
Okay, so I think this is a good segue then to our topic of conversation, in which we title every single one of our episodes, What the Fuck Is? And this one is, What the Fuck is a Prenup? What actually is it?
Yeah. So what the fuck is a prenup? A prenup is a contract between 2 people. I say two because sometimes people want it to be three or four, depending on the parental arrangements. But I believe in most jurisdictions, it's still only two people that contemplate what will happen at the breakdown of a relationship. And a breakdown of the relationship is either or often one of your deaths or divorce.
Okay.
And in Ontario, anyway, it can contemplate your assets and debts, and it can contemplate what we call spousal support in the States, they call alimony. It cannot contemplate anything to do with children.
Got it. So even if you have kids beforehand, your children do not go into that prenup.
So they can only go in so far as to say that that step parent wouldn't have child support obligations in places. But for kids, for example, that don't exist yet, or for kids of the marriage, you can try. It's just often not enforceable because the idea is we don't know where kids are going to go, we don't know what they need, and it's the right of a child who is not a party to this agreement.
Okay.
I don't know if that's a boring legal technicality, but
No,
that's why we're here.
And it's why we're here. So, and what other things other than kids would not fall under it?
everything else can fall under it if you choose to. So the thing
Okay.
about a prenup is it doesn't also have to deal with much. It can be
Yeah.
really narrow. It can deal
Yeah.
with one issue. So for example, the issue that I see the most common is somebody buying a home. And
Okay.
let's say it's like $1 million house and someone is putting in $500,000 and someone's putting in $25,000. And someone says, yeah, like I want to build a beautiful life with you, but we're putting this into joint names and I'm putting a lot more money in and I want to make sure that division is recognized. You can have a prenup that just deals with that. And
Okay.
every other issue in separation or death is in accordance with the law.
Got it.
So it
Okay.
can be as vast as you want or as narrow as you want. And one thing that we're always trying to do, which is kind of weird about prenups, is that you're contracting something that hasn't happened yet, which is
Yeah.
bizarre. Like you're saying, like, if we divorce, which we don't ever plan to do, then I believe I'm going to want to do X, Y, and Z. And the
Right.
problem with these agreements is if you get to the divorce place and your agreement is deemed unconscionable, which is like ridiculous in the eyes of the court, a court can say, never mind, we don't like it. So these agreements are really tricky because you need to make sure that you're doing something that's fair enough for two reasons. One, that you set yourself up for a good divorce.
Yeah.
I say this, people are like, that I wouldn't want to. I won't like them. I'm like, trust me, your kids will thank you.
Yeah.
That's number one. And sometimes when you haven't had kids, by the way, you can't contemplate what it's like to be a parent till you're a parent. But I know every child of divorce tells me, I wish my parents thought of me more. All the time. So that's one of the reasons why you want to do it. And the second is you don't want a whole mess down the road. You're investing a lot of money into this agreement. You want to make sure that it's going to stand up and you can rely on it.
So would you say getting a prenup then allows for a cleaner divorce potentially down the line?
I think it can. I also
Okay.
think it can create a real big mess if it's not done properly, if it's not done thoughtfully, and if somebody did not want to sign it.
Okay.
So I've never heard the term unconscionable. I didn't realize that a prenup in some instances isn't upheld in the court. Do you have an example of what that would look like? What's considered unreasonable in the eyes of the law?
I have lots of examples because people do
Yeah,
this all the
yeah.
time. So, like, here's a prime one. You get married at 25, and somebody came in with a business that was worth like nothing. Like, it was a startup worth very little. You sign a prenup saying, I don't get any part of the business. I don't get any spousal support. I don't get to share in any of your assets. I then become a stay at home parent. I have nothing. I then separate 20 years, and all of a sudden you're worth $30 million, and I'm walking away with child support.
Holy
At
shit.
some point, maybe the court says that's absolutely fair. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't.
Yeah.
Sure.
And if they don't, then what? So there are cases where the courts have absolutely overturned these agreements. Sometimes it's just a term of them or one clause of them. Sometimes it's a whole agreement.
And would you recommend then in that case that the 25-year-old woman who becomes a 40-year-old woman 15 years down the line has been home with the kids, that she goes and revisits said prenup and redrafts it? Is that a possibility if you're like, babe, just FYI, I have no protection under this. Still don't plan to get divorced, but I do want to cover my bases. Is it just that people get lazy? They don't think to do it, or, what's the deal?
I think it can be A couple of things. I think one reason is they have the kind of relationship where that would not be invited.
Yeah.
So that's just not
Fair.
an option for them. I think some people don't know they can. You can.
Sure.
Absolutely can, and you should.
You can redo your prenup,
Oh,
but
yeah,
it'll be called
for
something
sure.
different, right?
Yeah, it will just be an amendment, and it should be done in a case
Yeah.
like that, in my view.
Yeah.
And then other people feel like they could have that conversation, but they don't want to open up what feels like a can of worms. It's why people don't get one to begin with.
Sure.
And if things are good, they're like, yeah, I know that's what they'll say, but maybe it won't actually end up that way. Or what I hear a lot is, yeah, I know he said I should sign this, or she said I should sign this, but she said, of course, she'll always take care of me. I hear that a lot. So I don't really need to do anything because, like she said, she would. And what they don't realize is that, yeah, okay, hopefully, maybe, but if they
But people
don't, you have
change, yeah,
nothing
in
to
these
control
situations.
them.
Yeah.
So yes, they can be updated and amended. I think where we've gone wrong, if that's the kind of agreement you're looking at, where someone's not feeling great about signing it, and I can tell you that 12-year-old is very scared to sign that agreement. They are not okay with it. I can tell you that. And if they
What
are,
12-year-old?
The 25-year-old.
25-year-old.
I thought you said the 12-year-old. I
Oh,
was like, I
sorry. If I
thought
did, I
kids
meant the 25-year-old.
weren't involved.
Is
The
feeling,
25-year-old
is having feelings about it, right?
Totally.
Because when I'm on if that 25-year-old who is now a 40 or 45-year-old calls me, she's like, I knew I shouldn't have signed it. I knew
Yeah.
it. I felt like I didn't have
Totally.
a choice. The parents were pressuring me, or I wanted to just get married and get it done with, or I didn't realize.
Yeah.
No comment.
What do you suggest women do in those situations? We actually had already previously done an episode on merging finances with your partner, and we talked a lot about this up until the point of maybe signing a prenup. And Shalina, who is the wealth manager, the actual expert for that episode, said, my first piece of advice is that you're marrying someone that you trust and that you have an open line of communication with, and that you also maintain some amount of financial independence in the case that you get to this point. So all of that reiterated, what would you suggest? Someone comes to you with a prenup, maybe they have more family money, maybe they have inheritances coming, who knows what the situation is, and you aren't super comfortable with it. I mean, you should never really sign a contract you're not comfortable with, but life happens and here we are. What do you say to that woman? You say, get your own lawyer, make sure you have representation.
You should never
What is
sign
it?
one of these without a lawyer. Ever.
Okay.
I don't care where you have to find the money to pay for one. You have to you have to know what you're signing. You need counsel, for
You
sure.
need your own counsel. So someone might bring it to the table and say, hey, my parents' lawyer drafted this. It's to deal with inheritance, blah, 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 blah. You sign the dotted line and you're saying they should bring their own lawyer to the table.
So I have so many thoughts about that scenario.
Okay.
Please.
That sucks. If that's happening, that just sucks. And I'm sorry if that happens to you. The answer to that is I will not be signing that without a lawyer. And we're going to start again. And the starting again is we're going to sit and have a conversation about the goals that we have together, about how we're going to treat one another in this relationship, and how those goals translate to the end, if it ever comes. And so one of the things that's important to me is that I have transparency of information. So if your parents are putting together an agreement that involves me, I'd like to be at the table to have that conversation before something is drafted.
Totally.
It's
Totally.
not okay to have a contract that involves your name that you didn't
Yeah.
know or have visibility on. And some people might say, I'm totally fine with that, but check in, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
I would expect someone to say, look, this is standard in my family. You know, we have a lot of money. They're going to want you to sign something. What do you need? What do you need from me to feel safe? Are you okay if I send you a draft? Would you rather have a conversation? Would you like a process? Like, what can I do to make this a safe thing for you as the person who is on your team
Yeah.
Right.
and loves and cares about you? And I think a lot of people hide behind their parents or their lawyer. Not acceptable. At the end of the day, if you're asking your partner in life to sign something that could impact them at all, you should be very okay that they feel safe and good and well advised before they do that.
So
Great
that's
advice.
really interesting. There's a lot, but in a ideal world where you're two people coming together, when do you think people should start having those conversations around do we need a marriage contract? Should we get a prenup?
I think it depends who you are. So if you're somebody who's running a really big business and you have a shareholder agreement, for example, that says you need one, which a lot do, I think being like, just like as you're starting to talk about moving in, and we all know when we start planning a life with someone, right? We all know we start having those chats. What will our kids' names be? Like, where might we live? And then we like meet with a broker and talk about, a mortgage. And then all of a sudden we have a joint account. I would think that if you're someone who knows right away that you're either contractually bound to get one because of the, or you come from the kind of family where there's a trust and there's a lot of money and your siblings went through it, or you just know,
Yeah.
if you're those people, that you should be saying, look, this is part of the business of marriage for me. And I have no idea what the terms are going to say yet, because that is a conversation that you and I are going to have. But I want to just let you know that it's a thing. I don't want it to feel scary. I don't want to hide behind it. I don't want to be the elephant in any of our rooms. And I think if you're the person who needs that kind of agreement, the onus is on you to make sure that you've found a process that's going to meet the needs of your family, your couple, whoever. I offer a very mindful process where I work in a team. We have meetings together before anything is drafted and start having a conversation about visualizing how will these terms feel in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years. Let's place two kids in the mix. What do the numbers look like? So
Right.
one of the things that I think is really critical if you're hiring a lawyer on any of this is, what would this look like if I have two kids, I'm not working, and it's 10 years out? What would the law give me roughly? And what am I saying no to, and will I be okay?
That is so great. Like, I'm putting myself in future me shoes. I think what would be super useful to hear from you is, what should someone come to the table prepped with?
So this is what's you mean with your partner?
Yeah.
Not to like harp on this, but I do
Yeah.
think to sit down and be like, what are your beliefs around divorce? Like, let's just start
Okay.
there. Like, do you believe that we should take care of each other if we've built a life together or not? That's a
Sure.
really important thing to know, because I have people that come in and they say, I don't believe, we'll assume whatever rules, I'm happy to do whatever during the marriage, but if we're not together, I do not believe it's my responsibility to care for you, my kids, but not you. That is
Sure.
I'm not critical of that belief system, but you got to know if you're with someone like that. And the law doesn't love that, right? The law says we care for each other, especially with children, for whatever time is prescribed based on your circumstance. So the first thing I'd be coming to is having a conversation about our belief system and goals together. It's the first thing. What do I believe? And what if everything was flipped on its head? What if someone who was the earner got disabled and couldn't work? What if me, the primary breadwinner, decided that we had a child with special needs and I'm the best one to stay home? What if life isn't at all what we pictured it?
Right.
Right? Let's throw every circumstance at it. Do I still hold this belief system? Or am I holding this belief system because I'm scared about something? My parents got divorced and my mom had nothing. And I didn't think that was fair. And she worked so hard, whatever the case, right?
Yeah.
Like, where is this coming from? Is it coming from a belief system, from a trauma? And I encourage people who have the ability to do this conversation in couples counseling
That's a
before you
great,
see lawyers.
that's a great
With a
tip.
To
professional.
start having like, hey, we probably are going to have to do this. We need to have some good conversation about this. It's a really hard topic. Do we feel differently if we die? Most people do. Versus if we separate while we're alive. How do we feel about roles assumed during the relationship? Like, if you haven't had children, you're both working and you're, what do they call them? Dual income, no dips or whatever. Dual
Yeah,
income, no.
dual income, no children, or
Yeah,
something
basically
like
like,
that.
what a beautiful life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what happens when all of a sudden, who's carrying the mental load of all of life when that changes?
Yeah.
How do we feel about that? Like, those are conversations people do not have. And let me tell you, when I'm consulted on the divorce end, I always go back to like, where did this start? And I would say 50% of the time, I always knew, because there was like X, Y, and Z red flags. And the others, we had kids. And we did not talk about, and I didn't think I'd be the parent doing everything. I didn't think I'd have to go to work and be the primary parent. I didn't think that.
Right.
I'm exhausted. I'm burnt out. I didn't think that. I didn't think that through. We never talked about it.
So a lot of that I think is still applicable when one member of the couple or one part of the couple is the driving factor for whatever reason, their family, themselves, etc. And you said the onus should be on that one person if that's what they want or that's what they need. If you're in a couple, for example, I'm newly engaged, we're getting married next year, neither of us are trust fund babies, and so therefore, neither of our families certainly are pushing prenups. Both of our parents are still together, so it's not in our familial history that there's divorce. It's not really top of mind. But meanwhile, I feel like I've been told my whole life, you need a prenup because that's the right thing to do because you need to protect yourself. Like as an independent woman, that's what you should get. So for couples like that, where there's no driving force, would you say every couple should get one, no matter what? Or if not, what should a couple consider before they get one or in deciding that they want one?
So first of all, congratulations.
Thank
Um,
you.
We're very excited.
so,
Thank you.
secondly, no, not everyone needs one. There's a big investment and it costs money. So absolutely not everybody. So I will tell you what I think you should do, and then I'm going to tell you who ordinarily should really think it through. So, what I think everybody in that case should do is have a conversation neutrally. Like I offer a 15-minute conversation with couples all the time for free to just say like, why do you think you need one? And some people say because the society tells me, and I'll ask a few questions that I'll raise in a minute and help us assess whether that's a conversation we should have or not. Most
Sure.
lawyers, if that feels like a bit odd for your couple, I will sometimes have a 1-hour meeting with people to really go through whether it's a good investment or not. And when I talk about investment, I don't mean just cost, I mean the emotional investment of having these conversations. So no, not everyone should have one. If you're coming in with a home, any kind of home, then yes, please have a conversation because in most jurisdictions there's special treatment for homes. If you're a business owner, like you own this podcast, right? When it becomes really big, what are the expectations around it?
Amen.
And is there any businesses associated with it? Anybody doing kind of a creative project, anything with intellectual property, a startup, you already own a business. Often that can be a complicated asset to deal with in separation. So you want to make sure there's clarity on what's going to happen. Again, family asset or money. Oh, second marriages, right? If you're coming in with kids, anybody with
Sure.
kids. I say them second, but they could be third or fourth or fifth or something. Or if your net worths are really, really, really different, it might be worthy of a conversation.
Okay.
Everybody else who may want to explore it, and I believe everyone should know. So just back up. When you get married, nobody tells you you're like opting into a whole set of law.
Right.
What those
Right.
laws
It's
are, and
it's
no one
this
even
fun thing, and you sign a
oh, it's
contract
so
that
fun.
probably no one reads.
No. And like, so
Right.
when I got married, I was like, you know what we're doing here? And he's like, yeah, we'll do our vows. It's gonna be the best party. I'm like, yes, and like that's the wedding. The marriage, there's a legality of marriage that nobody actually knows. It's the most bizarre thing. We all live this life entering into relationships with people and adopting a set of principles we don't even know. So
Totally.
sometimes for people that are like, we're not 25, we do have something to our name, we're doing these creative things, and I don't know what it means for me. Investing in some time with somebody who can help you, like I would do this, is a really good use of your time. And you might do an hour and decide there's nothing to do, but at least
Sure.
you knew, and at least you got educated on what you're entering into together.
So interesting. And I don't know if you know, so I might have to do independent research on I'm American, my fiance is South African. We haven't yet decided where we will sign the contract. We have to figure out, are we getting married in South Africa at the US? What does that mean? And then to your point, what set of laws does that hold us to? Caitlin's in the same boat. She just married a South African. You signed
But
the
we got
papers
married.
in.
We got married in Ontario.
So if you're going to do a prenup, you have to establish the jurisdiction that's going to apply. So some people want to make sure that if there's assets that are in a jurisdiction where the law, you could file a court application to get something that they're dealing with it in that jurisdiction.
So if you say, Stephen and I, we got married in Canada, that's where we signed our contract. We did not get a prenup. We had the conversation that we felt that what we grow together in, at the end, we feel comfortable splitting it 50-50, and how, to your point, how we value taking care of each other. But if we were to have signed a prenup or marriage contract in Ontario, but then we moved to London, to the UK, does it become void if we've moved?
No.
No. And would you then file for divorce in the UK, or do you file in the place where you got married?
So that's tricky. You should file in the place that your agreements. So at most agreements in Ontario often will say that we will enforce this agreement within Ontario. But that's only for all issues that the contract deals with.
Got it.
So sometimes, not to be confusing, but you could say, I'm dealing with a parenting issue and the agreement is silent on parenting and I want that dealt with in the jurisdiction in which we live. And then you can get into a fight about jurisdiction around these contracts and enforceability. You should work with a lawyer, and I am not one of them, who works interjurisdictionally. Like one of the questions, if that's you, is I would be saying, what experience do you have with working with contracts where people are in a lot of different countries?
So do you think then going into this, prenups ever make couples feel more secure?
Probably not. Probably not. What I think the conversations, if done properly around them, can do is make you more solid. I'm not sure secure is the right word. I think because they're viewed as weapons. I think as we start to look at them as, like, I try to equate them to your life insurance policy.
Right.
Totally.
Or your will, or
Yeah.
a lot of other documents that we do that are kind of benign feeling. These are still viewed as these like us or them weapons against each other. I'm protecting me and what's mine. And I think until they're viewed differently, and they should be viewed differently, they're a planning tool.
Yeah.
And I think that also we need to evolve a little. Like people used to get married when they were 18 and they went for a living with their
Totally.
parents to their kid. That's when the laws were created. I've been with my husband a long time, but we got married when I was 30. Like there's been a lot of life led, right? And people are having less kids. There's a bigger transfer of generational wealth. There's just really real and okay reasons to have different conversations about this. And I think that if we can do it in a way that is kind, that is focused on each other as two people together in love who are trying to make good plans for their life, it can really solidify a good marriage, I believe. I think
Yeah.
when it's done badly, it can increase the ability that you separate because you have felt so wronged.
And I completely agree with you on this. I think it's even just the act of having this conversation is also cementing in your relationship. Oh, this is how we both view this topic that we might have never spoken about over a glass of red wine. Because, like, when would you talk about, oh, we might get divorced? So even just having the conversation feels super constructive. When do you think someone should look at a mid-nup or a post-nup? And can you
question.
tell us what those are?
Yeah. So none of those are a thing in Ontario. They're all just called a
Okay.
marriage contract once you're married.
Yep.
In the States, they're called post-nups. I've heard of a mid-nup, but maybe it's
Okay.
a thing.
That's fine.
And
Okay.
again, those are after you're married. We call them marriage contracts. Again, just a bunch of jargon. Those are important if you're about to get a bunch of money and you're about to put that money into a renovation or pay down a mortgage or joint names. If you're going to start a business that is going to have you putting in a lot of your money, but maybe the shareholder agreement says that that's not a shareable asset and you need an agreement. There could be complexities around it, but did something financially really shift in your life that is outside of the labor of the relationship? Or someone gets like a big one is inheritance, right? A transfer of wealth. And the thing about post-naps that are really challenging is there has been a really long marriage already often, or some kind of relationship where we built an economic partnership together. And then we're having a conversation about, so, I have ones where someone's like, I inherited $2 million. We're going to buy this house and I want it excluded. I want to know that if we separate, I get it back, which on its face is a completely reasonable thing in my view to feel. Then you have the other person who's like, I've made 4 times what you've made. And I still am at pickup for our kids and I'm still off on the weekend, but I made 4 times what you've made the whole relationship. And I have no clause in here about that, right? And you'll be $2 million richer than me. So
Fair.
we deal with that. So it's never, right? And it's totally fair too.
It's
Yeah.
so not black and
Not
white.
black and white. Right.
Not black and white. And that's why you need skilled professionals who can hold space for all of that.
So if we're looking at this from a functional standpoint, someone's listening to this, they're going to sit down with their partner, have this conversation, and they thought, okay, do you know what? We're just going to speak to someone like Alexa just to get some clarity and some knowledge. What questions should people have ready when they do decide, hey, we just want to educate ourselves, we want to speak to a lawyer? What questions should they have when they go to that table?
So I think there's sort of two buckets of questions. One is you're interviewing that professional to work perhaps with you. And so
Okay.
I would have a whole different set of questions for them, which would be how do you do this? How do you go about these agreements? Are we involved at all? Maybe that works for you, maybe it doesn't. How do you make sure that my costs are going to be managed? And how do you make sure that our dynamic together is going to be managed? What are you doing to support those two things?
Interesting.
Right?
In the process of designing this
Yeah.
marriage contract / prenup. Okay.
Are you someone that goes to court over all divorces? Like, is that your style? Right? That might work for you. You might love that. Or you might want someone who's a bit more settlement oriented, who has those soft skills that can be employed. Again, it depends. I'm not doing right or wrongs. It's just,
Yeah.
I want to know who I'm hiring because you're really entrusting that person with very valuable information. No lawyers are cheap. Okay. Nobody. So you're going to be making a financial investment. You want to make sure they're going to serve you. And what you do not want is an agreement that is like half reliable and you've just had about 17,000 fights with your partner because of how bad it went. Okay? Like, I hate to say it, but I'm like often the second person, like, can you fix this, please? And it's like, yeah, let's get in a
Brutal.
room. We're going to have a chat. Right. So that's the first thing is who are you hiring? Who are you getting this advice from? And is it the right person? Really inform yourself. And maybe if you get a referral, referrals are great. Do you know anyone who's done this? Like, how was your experience? So that's one part of it. And then in terms of questions, it would really be to come educate them with why you think you might need one. If you have
Okay.
no money to your name, you earn relatively the same income, like you don't need one. You don't need to make that call. You don't need to bother yourself with all of this. If you're anybody else, you might want to say, here's my background, right? Like we have a difference in income. So what is your differential of income? What's your asset picture? Just baseline, right? What is your anticipated inheritance? And what are your goals? So
That's
that
great.
the lawyer can have a financial picture on income and assets and they can understand what you want. And they'll be
Okay.
able to kind of hopefully narrow in on what you need. So I think
Yeah.
maybe more important than all of that is picking who you hire and making sure you hire the right person for you.
And that's
point.
such great advice because it's definitely not something you would think about. You'd probably just Google prenup lawyer and then click whatever the sponsored post on Google and then
Well,
DM them.
everybody's
Like,
paying to be the top one. Like, I can't tell you how many lectures I
Exactly.
go to where everyone's like, you want to pay to be the first click. And I was like, I have no interest in that at all. If I can't serve you, and I don't work for everybody, I can't help everybody.
Yeah.
We all have our niche, and it's important that you're working with somebody who aligns with you, who's going to not only take care of you, but take care of your spouse. Like if you love, you say
Right.
you do, you're about to make a whole bunch of vows talking about very important, meaningful things. I would hope that you'd want them to be treated well too and with respect and dignity, and that when there's difference, they have some tools in their toolbox to help you bridge difference. I would hope.
You were speaking about the cost implications, and you said it's very expensive, and that for some people, this is a huge, not only time and mental investment, but also a monetary one. So, my first question is how much does it cost typically, at least in Ontario? Maybe that gives us a benchmark. And then I'd also love to know just high level, what does the process look like? How long does it take? How long are people speaking to lawyers, professionals through this, start to finish?
So cost is an impossible thing to answer but here's what it
bet.
depends on. It's not inaccessible. It's just expensive. So I sometimes just compare a wedding, for example. Like it's way, way, way less than your wedding. Okay. Way.
I read
Um,
$3,000 on a website, and
that
to
would
me,
make it, I
that's
think that would be, I don't know what $3,000 means to people. So I don't want to
right.
pretend it's
To
like a
me, that's
less.
very expensive. I was like, oh, well, I'm not getting one then. I
Yeah,
was
I
like,
would
no,
say that's
forget it.
on the cheaper end.
Yeah, right. And I can imagine
And
so.
again, if all you're doing is dealing with one little tiny narrow issue that has no complexity, for sure you're not spending a lot of money. For sure. When I'm talking about expensive, so I don't know what people's definition of expensive is. What I think you need to ask is what are your lawyers' hourly rates? What do they think it's going to cost? Get a few quotes. So you start,
Shop around.
that's what I would do. For my files, I can say, $3,000 would be a very simple one.
Fair.
If they're expensive, do they have any juniors working under them that can help take over some of the costs? Who is
Great
doing the
suggestion.
background work, and what are the hidden fees they might see, and what
Totally.
is their process for touching base with you about costs. Also, the more conversations you have without a lawyer, the better. It's just cheaper. Go to a therapist. Like, do a lot of this pre-work with a therapist so that you're not blinding someone with something they don't know, because things that cost
Yeah.
money are anger and shock, and those are things, right? If we are can't believe what we're reading, we get our back up.
Totally.
And if you told me I was going to sign something and it reads real different, we're going to get our
Yeah.
back up. Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of process, every process is different. The one I believe in is I have an hour meeting with the client. I want to know all about you. I want to understand what your money is, what your goals are, where do you want it to go. Like, I want to know all of it. And then by the end of that meeting, I'm going to give you some legal information, and I'm going to give you some talking points with your partner about what we talked about and how that's going to work for you. And then again, depending on the complexity, either I'm going to encourage you to get you to ask your spouse or your partner to get a lawyer right away. And I'll
Okay.
often give them a list of referrals that I work well with, because if I work well with them and I know the process, I can help guarantee an outcome
Sure.
versus not. And then my process would be, we usually have one meeting, the four of us, to talk about your goals, reintroduce the law, and talk about what the terms are together,
Okay.
so that no one feels surprised. Everyone's getting the information together. There isn't, my lawyer said this, but my lawyer said this, but I have to call back again and
Right.
call back again. It's more efficient, it's more productive, it's more holistic, it's kind.
Yeah.
Alignment.
Sometimes there's proposals, right? It's like, okay, and sometimes we agree in that meeting. Sometimes there's two meetings. And then we draft the agreement at the end once everyone's on board. That's the process I employ. A more traditional process is you meet with a lawyer privately, you don't tell your spouse anything about it, they draft an agreement, and you get mad. I don't.
And once you file it, once you draft it, you sign it, you file it, that can be a pretty immediate in
So in
effect.
Ontario, you don't file them.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
You
you
just
just have
sign
them?
it and
You
you just
sign it?
sign it and keep it.
Yeah,
You put it in a
like
drawer
a
somewhere?
will. Yeah.
Interesting. Super
I
interesting.
don't
Okay,
know
super
I
helpful.
think in
Thank
other
you.
jurisdictions you do file it, but in here we don't. Oh, the other big thing is do this well before a wedding or moving in. Like, I guarantee you there's going to be Thanksgiving weddings. So our Thanksgiving in Canada is in October. I'm going to call
Oh
this.
yeah.
I can't turn around an agreement in a thoughtful way in 4 weeks. Can't do it. I won't do it.
Yeah.
So give yourself lots of time so that we don't have the whole wedding riding in the balance of this being signed. Those are the kinds of things we can do to plan. So a long time ahead of time. Do not
We're talking months, like in terms of the process, like we're
months and
talking give
months.
yourself months,
Like,
months and months.
ideally
Give yourself
6 months. Yes.
okay. Okay.
Lots of time.
Good to know. Good to know.
So
Okay.
then, what is the one thing you think women specifically should know about marriage contracts and prenups? After having this entire conversation, what should be the takeaway that people have?
That you're a party to this agreement. This is your life. This is everything that matters to you. And that you should do whatever you need to do to feel like you're a part of it in a way that's meaningful for you. You should never feel like you're forced to sign anything. You should never sign anything with your intimate partner that feels icky or wrong or you have questions about or that doesn't sit well. And no one can make you. These are
Fair.
voluntary. No one can make you. And if someone is, you need to slow it down and figure out why.
And vice versa, if the woman's the driving force, consider your partner in the same way.
Totally.
And
Just consider your spouse. Like, do this as a team. I think, again,
Totally.
I think the more you can do this together, the better. It's going to be cheaper. It's going to be easier. It's going to make you stronger. And I think that kindness goes a long way and patience goes a long way.
This was so enlightening for me. I cannot tell you. I learned so much from this that I didn't know. And also, personally feel a lot better and more comfortable around the topic as a whole, because it's been, I feel like, ingrained in us to get a prenup. You have to protect yourself. Worst case scenario, financial infidelity, blah, 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 like financial abuse, all these different things. And it's a really scary thing to have thrown at you on top of making this crazy life decision that changes everything in your trajectory. So just knowing that there's a way to analyze this of whether it's right for you, and one size shoe doesn't fit all, but having the tools to know, hey, as long as you agree on these things, you will be okay if you don't get a prenup. And I think that's a really great message, at least for me, to leave with.
But also,
It's
I
not
would
for
just also
everyone.
say this. Also, know what you're opting into as a married person. So if you're going to do things like not work, if you're going to do things like, yeah, be at home fully, like, which is a very hard and important job, like, before you make a really big decision that is going to have you either take on all of the financial responsibility, right? So maybe you're the breadwinner and you're allowing your spouse or allowing, you've decided that you're gonna, have someone stay at home. Like, you understand what that is in separation. Understand that. Like, make sure you understand what those decisions are. Because I think a lot of people make them without a lot of conversation. It kind of just happens. So I would say yes on the prenup tip, but also if you're going to make a really big decision that's going to have you either providing fully or relying fully, just get a consult on what it means. Like, divorce doesn't need to be scary, but you should understand what your rights are every step of the way so that you don't feel like you're in a scary place.
Yep.
And-
Knowledge is power.
Exactly. And read the marriage contract. You're signing a contract by getting married. So all of it, having knowledge around all of it, and an
Understand the
understanding
law
of
in
all
your
of it.
jurisdiction when you're getting married.
Totally. Makes sense. Alexa, such a pleasure. Thank you so
Thank you
much
guys
for
for-
And are you okay if we link your website when we post this?
definitely.
And also,
Awesome.
just to plug, there's an International Academy of Collaborative Professionals, which is the international, all lawyers all over the world that are trained in collaborative practice. And a lot of those lawyers do a
Cool.
lot of prenup work. So it might be a good link as well
Yes.
for people if you're looking for someone in your jurisdiction.
Very
Amazing.
cool.
We
Who
will
approaches it
definitely
like
link
you.
that.
Yes,
Having me, I
it's
really
been so
appreciate
interesting.
it.
No,
People are
this
gonna
has
learn
been
so much.
amazing.
I
Has been
hope
so
it's helpful
helpful.
to people,
People
and
learn so much. So
relationship is
helpful.
so special. Like, this should just,
It is.
hopefully this just helps make people happier and stronger.
Welcome to the Debrief, where we discuss things we needed a little more clarity on.
All right.
Hello.
Prenups.
Prenups. Very exciting. We love Alexa.
We love Alexa. I was saying, I
I-
was like, if I ever got divorced,
I
mean,
know.
God forbid, but like to have her on your side, she just seems so practical and caring and
I know.
like,
And so
yeah.
intentional. I know.
Yeah.
Which I feel like is a buzzword, but I love it. She is so intentional. I know I said the same thing to Steven. I was like, if we ever get divorced, we're using
Yeah.
Alexa. And he was like, we're not getting divorced. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
just in case.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, but I feel like with this episode, going into it, I was kind of nervous because we didn't get a prenup. So I was nervous that then my takeaway was going to be like, oh shit, we messed up. We
Totally.
should have gotten one. But I felt so good walking away because she really made me realize that it's okay not to get a prenup. And it doesn't mean you're not a strong, independent woman. And I feel like that's what we've
Totally.
been told is that you're not a strong, smart, independent woman if you don't get a prenup and write down what's yours and what's his and what you're going to walk away with. But the reality is we're walking into this with nothing. And you're also
Right.
coming into this with your partner. They're just like your intimate life partner and you
Right.
have the best intentions. And so it made me feel a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, I went into it anticipating learning enough to confirm that we probably want one. And same as you, I walked away being like, oh, we're not getting one.
Yeah.
There's just no need. And I think that her kind of like definitive way of saying if you don't have incredible assets that already coming into it, we don't have a home. She said a home is a big one. She said if you don't have a massive income discrepancy or things like a trust fund or inheritances coming in, she's like, then you don't need one. I'm like, well, great. Tick, 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 tick.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So
No, it's good.
that was
The one thing we didn't talk about that I think might be another case that you would do it is if one person has a lot of debt. So going into it, just saying,
Okay.
hey, if anything ever happens, the other person is not responsible for this person's debt coming in.
And
I-
Shalina actually
Yeah.
touched on that. Yeah, in our
Exactly.
emerging finances, where she said, if it's a minimal amount, you may just
Yeah.
agree that if you ever separate, it's a wash. But if it's a huge amount, then you may want to write that down. That like I helped you pay off $300,000 worth of debt. Now we're separating, and I want, more of the balance from the house sale or whatever that is.
Totally.
Okay, should I just kind of run through some of my other key takeaways? So
Yes.
first one, top of the list was that not everyone needs one. So
Yes.
happy days.
Yeah. Snap, me
You know,
too.
obviously, yeah, speak to a professional, speak to an actual expert to decide whether or not you need one. But I'm walking away feeling good about that. Second, for me, was read the marriage contract. I don't know a single person. I don't think. Did you read your marriage contract when you signed
No,
it?
absolutely not. We went to City Hall, picked it up, and I took a photo outside of it with the Toronto sign in the background and posted on Instagram and said, "Hey, we're married." Like we would as
Put
soon
it
as
in
I
a
signed it on the
drawer
front.
and have no idea what it says. And I thought it was so interesting that if you don't have a prenup, then you go based on what the court does by default, which I
Yeah.
mean, I've never really thought that through. But so knowing what your marriage contract says, where you live, and what that says about what the court will do in the case of a separation if there's not a prenup, which gives you more power in that. Just knowing all that up front, I feel like is so important. And I literally don't know one person who has ever read it. So read your
Absolutely not.
contracts,
Read your
people.
contract, and then I think on top of that is what is the family law? What do they say when you get divorced? Because I think your marriage contract says one thing, but then when it marriage dissolves, what the law says happens then I think is not in that contract.
Okay.
Is
So
my
just,
is
yeah.
my assumption. So you need to just know what happens going into it and what happens post.
Right. Okay. Yeah, like within your jurisdiction effectively. And
Exactly.
Mimi, our mentor Mimi always says, reading is fundamental. She says,
Yes.
read your contracts. We used to work with her at work and she'd say, what does the contract say? And we'd say, we
I
didn't
don't
read it.
know.
She's
I
like, what do
didn't
you
read
mean you
it.
didn't read it? So now read
Yeah.
your contracts.
Read the
Um,
contract.
Another takeaway that I had never heard of collaborative practices, collaborative law.
Mm-hmm.
So cool. Such a holistic way of approaching things. Yes, very expensive, probably a great privilege to have access to. But to have like social workers or like child
Totally.
therapists or financial people who come in and like every person does their individual job based on what they are actual experts on. Like, what an incredible way to do it if you can.
Totally.
So
Totally.
we'll put that website that she listed, which is global,
Yes. Yes,
in the
definitely.
description.
And to her point, she said you're gonna spend a lot of money getting divorced, or a lot of money to you, whatever that looks like. It's gonna be you're gonna spend money on getting divorced, and so know that there's options on how you can get divorced or how you can dissolve it. And so if it for me, if it's that little bit more, but you get access to a kinder, and I think she used the word kind quite often,
Mhm.
approach to it and thoughtful and intentional approach to it, for me would be worth spending a little bit more. But at the same
Mhm.
time, I don't know how much a regular divorce lawyer costs. Maybe it's the exact same.
Yeah, it's
Who's
true.
to
I
say?
know. And so knowing that that is out there as a potential option, I think is good to keep in mind. To that point around her emphasis on kindness throughout
Hmm.
the process and how she doesn't approach it from a protection mindset, which I think we all, especially as women, come into it being like, you have to protect yourself. That's what we're told. Just like, don't come in from a mindset of protecting yourself versus your partner, then it's an us versus them thing, so much as like you're planning for your future together. But the other thing that she said that stuck out to me was the things that cost money are anger and shock. It's like so poignant.
Hmm.
So people get angry, people are shocked that you said one thing, the contract says another, whatever. That's what costs money. And so she said the more that you can do before speaking to lawyers with a counselor or a cheaper form of, partnership support, she's like, go have these conversations either alone over a glass of wine or with a counselor or a mediator or sorry, mediator is the wrong word because she's a
A
mediator, but
therapist.
a therapist and work it all out. And then hopefully it's like a clean and easy process. I was like,
Totally.
such good
Totally. No,
advice.
and that was a big one for me too, was it felt like the idea of having the conversation of prenups feels so scary and feels so unromantic and cold. But the way she described it made it feel like, hey, this actually can be slightly romantic in the sense of I'm thinking about us. And it also opens up having the conversation around, hey, how do you picture marriage and also post marriage? And how does this mean to you? If we were in a terrible situation to get divorced, where do you stand on how you take care of a person after? And I think that also is just
Totally.
generally a really important conversation to have because it comes down to values.
Yeah.
And if you have drastically different opinions on this, that is something to talk about before you sign a marriage contract, because that
Right.
is a difference in values, which is
Right.
scary. But it is also, if you come together and you say, hey, we have the same values on this, then how much more secure do you feel going into this relationship, knowing that you're
Yeah.
going in with the same mindset? So that was super reassuring for me on, this doesn't have to be a super ugly conversation.
Totally. And things, things change certainly. And she said people surprise each other, I think, when it comes to these processes. But to your point, checking in on something that's like a fundamental value. And she said it herself. She was like, if you don't feel that after you are divorced from someone that you owe them anything in terms of long-term support, kids are another story, but for that person, she's like, that's not wrong. There's no right
No.
or wrong here, but you may have very different ideas of what that means. So establishing that, exactly to your point, before you sign the marriage contract is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
And finally, on my side, I think the another biggest takeaway is just that prenups don't equal protection. She said prenups can make divorces go smoothly, but not always. They can also make divorces really messy. She was like, it depends on how good your prenup is. And
Yep.
so in my head, I was like, you have a prenup because if you get divorced, that's what you want because it makes it smoother and then it's a clean break. And she basically was like, that's not even the case. So lots of moving parts. And I think it comes down to who you work with. She gave us some great tips on questions to ask when you approach professionals about it and how to go through the motions. So I learned a lot.
I loved it. I love Alexa. I loved this conversation. I feel that she gave such great tools that felt so out of the ordinary and so unexpected in a way that felt really refreshing for how we move forward in conversations and just tools to have these kind of conversations. I thought that was great. But other than that, you summarized all of mine too. My biggest takeaway is that it's okay if you don't get a prenup as long as you have the right conversations ahead of time. So the caveat is you still should have the conversation, make sure you're on the same page, make sure your values are the same, but not everyone needs one, which is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Fab. Well, thanks to Alexa, and
Yeah.
we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Knowledge is power. Let's fucking
Thanks,
go.
guys. Let's fucking
Woohoo.
go.
Okay.